The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
The Democrats had control of this building, the White House, for 4 years, and they didn't do a dang thing when it came to transparency in regards to Jeffrey Epstein.
Amid mounting pressure to release more information on the Jeffrey Epstein case, President Trump issues a new order to the Justice Department.
These groups spent billions of taxpayers' dollars
looking to fix the border crisis, how the latest debate on immigration is pushing lawmakers to move on from past partisan gripes in order to tackle a humanitarian crisis.
My fear is that in the not too distant future, unmanned systems will perpetrate the largest terrorist attack in American history using drones.
The urgent warning is drone technology advances posing threats against America's most critical assets. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, we are glad you're here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. States continue to fight back against Chinese land ownership. The president continues toying with the idea of replacing Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The DOJ launches investigations into dozens of universities nationwide, and President Trump's spending cuts now finalized as Congress passes the rescissions bill. But first, developing now in the controversy surrounding the Epstein files, President Trump saying Thursday night on Truth Social he is authorizing Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This all comes as more Republicans in Congress and voters believe the Trump administration has handled the case poorly. As national correspondent Matt Gelka reports, not many appear to be listening to the president's repeated pleas to forget about Epstein and move on.
The Trump administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case and failure to deliver on long-promised new findings on the sex traffickers' alleged list of names became a national punchline at the ESPY Awards.
Actually, there was supposed to be an Epstein joke here, but as it got deleted. Must have probably deleted itself, right? Probably never existed, actually. Let's move on as a country and ignore that.
Hours after lashing out at members of his base demanding more transparency on the case by calling them weaklings and saying he didn't want their support, the president doubled down Wednesday night.
This Jeffrey Epstein hoax also, because that's the same stuff. That's all put out by Democrats.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the naive Republicans fall right into line like they always do.
The hoax claim was mocked by former Trump ally Elon Musk in a barrage of tweets, including saying the president should just release the files and point out which part is the hoax. MAGA hardliner Laura Loomer told Politico the scandal could consume Trump's presidency. And a new Quinnipiac poll taken in the past week showed 63% of voters disapproved of how the administration has handled the Epstein files. Broken down by party, 83% of Democrats, 71% of independents, and 40% of Republicans signaled their disapproval. Republicans in Congress have been more vocal about the issue, with some calling for a special counsel, while others plainly say the administration needs to put everything out there.
This is kind of highlighting the frustration that the American people have where they feel like their government is they can't trust their government.
The White House hasn't been able to tamp down the document drama quite yet.
He doesn't like to see Democrats and the mainstream media covering this like it's the biggest story that the American people care about.
Potentially adding more fuel to the fire, Maureen Comey, the Manhattan federal prosecutor who worked on the Epstein case and the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, was abruptly fired this week by the Southern District of New York. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
By the numbers now, a new poll signals Democrats are far more energized than Republicans about participating in next year's midterms. However, deeply negative perceptions of the Democratic Party raise questions about the party's ability to capitalize on that energy. A CNN poll found 72% of Democratic voters say they are extremely motivated to vote in next year's congressional election. That's 22 points above Republican voters. However, the poll reported that just 28% of Americans view the Democratic Party favorably, the lowest mark for Democrats in the history of CNN's polling going back to 1992. The Trump administration has recently fired at least 17 immigration court judges. According to the union representing those judges, 15 were fired last Friday without cause, and 2 more were fired just Monday. Those judges worked across 10 states, including Maryland, California, Illinois, and Massachusetts. In a statement, the union said while Congress have authorized 800 immigration judges, the firings are against public interest. This comes as the administration carries out its mass deportation policy. Things got heated during a Department of Transportation hearing this week, beginning when Democratic Congressman Jerry Nadler cited data showing major crimes are down 8% on New York subways since 2019. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy shot back, arguing otherwise.
That's a yes or no question.
Well, no, that's wrong. The assaults that we've seen are up 60% with MTA in the system since 2019.
Why do you continue to ignore this and lie about this in your public comments?
Well, my question, why do you continue to lie about people being lit on fire in subways or pushed in front of trains?
MTA data shows felony assaults rose about 60%, while overall major crimes are down between 8 and 18% over the last 5 years. City officials argue they've bolstered security. Taking a look over Capitol Hill this week, the House voted to pass the Genius Act, the first major legislation to set up a regulatory framework for cryptocurrency. It passed with bipartisan support Thursday, with over 100 Democrats voting yes. The bill establishes new rules for stable coins or digital tokens with value tied to other assets like the dollar. The House also passed 2 other crypto-related bills that will head to the Senate for consideration. Experts are sounding the alarm about a growing threat of drone attacks in the U.S., warning they could be used to target critical infrastructure or large crowds. During a House hearing this week, lawmakers heard just how real the risk is. The National News Desk, Janae Bowens, shows us more of the concerns.
Drone security experts and members of the House Homeland Security Committee warn the technology is advancing too fast.
Some 25 years ago, some manned aircraft systems were used to perpetrate the largest terrorist attack in American history. My fear is that in the not too distant future, unmanned systems will perpetrate the largest terrorist attack in American history using drones.
During a congressional hearing earlier this week, they analyzed the growing threat of drone attacks on critical infrastructure, including power grids, communication networks, and water systems. They also raised concerns about the possibility of drones being used for chemical attacks at mass gatherings here in the U.S.
You could ground air transportation to a halt. And that would cause irreparable economic damage.
There are also fears about airports lacking authority to take down AI drones, especially with reports of 400 illegal drone incursions near airports just this year.
In a very limited fashion, the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Energy have the authority to mitigate a rogue drone. It's not a standing authority.
When it comes to legislation, witnesses urged Congress to expand federal powers to better counter the growing drone threat. I'm Janae Bowens reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
President Trump signed a bipartisan law Wednesday aimed at cracking down on the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. The bill, known as the Halt All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act, permanently classifies all fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I under the Controlled Substances Act.
We'll be getting the drug dealers, pushers, and peddlers off our street, and we will not rest until we have ended the drug overdose epidemic. And it's been getting a little bit better, but it's horrible.
Trump has spoken extensively about the threat of fentanyl to the nation in his second term. He says is the key reason behind his illegal immigration crackdown and tariff threats against Mexico, Canada, and China. According to the CDC, there were more than 80,000 drug overdose deaths in the U.S. last year, most of them fentanyl related. The Trump administration just launched a new program to streamline migrant work visas. Let's go to Janae Bowens from the Fact Check team to dig into this. So this looks like a major shift.
Exactly, Dee Dee. So the Trump administration has created a new temporary Office of Immigration Policy to streamline legal hiring of migrant workers, particularly through the temporary and permanent visa programs. The goal, make sure there are enough hands to pick fruit, process meat, and clean hotels without changing immigration law. Now, according to Axios, the program requires workers to apply from their home countries, not from inside the U.S.
And this move came after a drop in farm labor.
Exactly. So Axios reports farmers warned the administration that up to 70% of their workforce was gone. Trump even posted on Truth Social urging ICE to leave the farmers alone. But the move is raising eyebrows within his own base.
Yeah, it's been some interesting developments in this area. Janae, thank you. Janae's going to join us in a few minutes to discuss how much undocumented immigrants contribute to the U.S. economy. Up next here, an antibiotic drug shortage fueled by a recall. The deadly disease experts warn that could see a spike in cases. Then,
I think Pam Bondi has bungled this.
Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick weighs in on the growing discontent with the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files. What he thinks needs to be done now in regard to the documents. President Trump's order to AG Pam Bondi authorizing the DOJ to release all grand jury testimony surrounding the Epstein case. Earlier this week, I spoke with our legal expert to discuss the next steps for the DOJ.
But I agree with the sentiment that we need to put it out there. And you know, Pam Bondi, I don't know, when she originally made the statement, I think she was talking about documents, as I understood it, that were on her desk. I don't know that she was specific about a list or whatever, but she needs to come forward and explain that to everybody.
Speaker Mike Johnson there breaking from President Trump's stance when it comes to disclosures on the Jeffrey Epstein case. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick joining us to discuss where this story may go next. It's great to see you. Axios reporting citing conversations with administration officials and top outside advisors saying the White House is considering possibly appointing a special counsel to investigate, removing redactions to already released documents, or petitioning courts to unseal records. Which do you think is the most likely outcome and why?
Well, I think the administration should do both. I think Pam Bondi has bungled this, and so I think the country wants transparency. So there's two ways to do it. DOJ can reach out to the courts where these documents are sealed and say, look, immediately unseal these. We want to make them public. And I think because the public has lost confidence in the Attorney General, I think she should appoint an attorney, a special counsel, or perhaps a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to review the documents and to make the appropriate release to the public. I think because of her lack of confidence and transparency that the public has in what she's done, I think the best thing to do is to bring in another lawyer who looks at it and then does release the files.
I mentioned earlier unsealing records. In 2018, I believe it was, the Miami Herald petitioned the courts to unseal documents connected to a lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. They were successful. Who has the power to petition a court to unseal documents connected to this case?
Well, Dee Dee, the entity that has the biggest power is the Department of Justice. If they want to unseal documents or have documents released to the public, if they go to a federal judge and say, for example, the discovery in the Epstein criminal case, after all, he's dead, we want to release that to the public. We think there's a public interest in doing that. If the Department of Justice files that petition with the judges that have the case underneath their jurisdiction, they will be successful and release it. If, for example, a news organization does it and DOJ opposes it, they will be unsuccessful. But the Department of Justice could unseal these documents quickly.
Well, you mentioned public interest. That clearly is here. Americans have a right to access, as you know, government information under the Freedom of Information Act. For that to even happen, though, the documents would have to be unsealed, correct? Help us connect the dots.
Yeah, Dee Dee, so the way that would work is the Department of Justice would file a petition with the judge who oversaw the Epstein case and say, hey, look, this case is over. He's dead. We want to release these documents to the public. We think it's in the public interest to unseal these documents. And if DOJ takes that position with the courts, they will be quickly unsealed.
All right, we'll wait and see. It is a case the world is watching. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick, always great to see you. Thank you for joining us. After passing President Trump's mega bill that ramps up ICE funding, House Republicans are calling for the federal government to cut ties with nonprofits, many of them religious groups who help migrants during the Biden administration. Here's the National News Desk, Atra El-Nashar.
Republicans backing President Trump's aggressive deportation efforts now going after non-governmental organizations that provided services to migrants during the Biden administration.
FEMA provided grants to numerous NGOs, many of whom are operating at the southwest border. These groups spent billions of taxpayers' dollars. Many of the NGOs served as a launching pad for mass illegal immigration.
Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee sent letters to more than 200 NGOs requesting information. Many of the groups are religious, and none have been found to have done anything illegal.
Republicans falsely accuse Catholic, Jewish, Lutheran, Methodist, Evangelical, Muslim, and secular charities that feed, clothe, and aid the needy of having, quote, supercharged the business model of cartels.
Instead of having NGOs appear before the committee, the witnesses included the Heritage Foundation's Mike Howell, who's promoted conspiracies about the 2020 election and former President Biden's use of an auto pen.
The goal has always been destabilization. This destabilization is happening right here around us.
With no clear goal for what should come of an investigation into the hundreds of charities, some lawmakers of both parties tell their colleagues to move on.
Newsflash! Joe Biden is not the president.
Moving forward, we need to make sure that legislation states properly that any NGO, whether or not be it a Catholic organization or whomever, has to follow certain guidelines and rules.
I would say the simpler solution is to stop funding the invasion of the United States. We can impose these standards.
Okay, I got you, buddy. I'm trying to go granular on this. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I'm trying to fix a problem that exists. We can bitch about it all day long, which we're just gonna beat each other up and we're not gonna go anywhere. I'm really trying to fix this problem, okay?
The Department of Homeland Security lists all the organizations that got this federal funding on its website and how much they got. The vast majority of the 200 charities Republicans are looking into are not on that list. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. continues to slim down his department. He fired both his chief and deputy chief of staff, allegedly, due to a lack of confidence in them. It's unclear if his decision was influenced by any specific incident. A liaison will step in temporarily. This comes after RFK Jr. fired 10,000 workers as part of his department restructuring plan. Pfizer is warning doctors it expects a shortage of Bicillin LA, an injection of the antibiotic penicillin. The drug is the preferred syphilis treatment during pregnancy, and without it, syphilis can cause miscarriages and stillbirths. This after a recall earlier this month found floating particles in the antibiotics. Health officials worry the shortage of the drug may reverse recent slowing rates of syphilis in adults and corresponding infections in babies. Still to come here, taking a stand. The mom and pop coffee shop taking on a food industry giant. Then, caught on camera, a North Carolina woman stealing disaster relief supplies from a church. How the pastor responded. We'll be right back. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, where a small coffee business is trying to fend off a food industry titan.
What started as an entrepreneurial dream for Evan Afline is now a slowly growing small business called Seattle Strong. But that name has drawn the ire of a corporate titan.
In my opinion, I think it's about the word Seattle.
Afline says he came up with the name Seattle Strong as a student at the University of Washington, then launched the cold brew coffee business and got the brand trademarked 2 years ago. The Nestle company, based in Switzerland, has been marketing a line of coffee products called Seattle's Best and asked the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to revoke Afline's trademark.
I think it's pretty ludicrous. To say that getting that trademark means that no one else can use the word Seattle, I think is an exceptional stretch.
In court filings, Nestle claims the names are so similar that coffee buyers may confuse the two brands, which would dilute the distinctiveness of Nestle's Seattle's Best mark and damage the international corporation. His legal bills are already mounting, which is money he'd rather reinvest to grow a small local company. But he says the fight is worth it.
Detective Scott Hanley, a 23-year veteran of Boca Raton Police, had just dropped off his grandkids when a Cessna came falling from the sky, slamming into a tree in a Pembroke Pines neighborhood. Inside that plane, a family of 4. Pilot Carlos Balza Cardenas, his wife Fandy Moretz, and their 2 teenage daughters.
The first thing I saw was the gentleman that was in the plane. He was kind of standing in an upright position with his back kind of against the window, kind of hitting it and kind of screaming frantically to kind of like, get us out of here, get us out of here.
Neighbors grabbed whatever they could, a fire extinguisher, a garden hose, and one man handed Hanley an axe.
Oh my God, they're trying to get him out of the plane.
I just took it a few times, hit the window shatters on the top, and we were able to get the gentleman out.
Through chance, instinct, and something close to a miracle, all 4 survived.
A woman in Asheville, North Carolina was caught on surveillance cameras robbing a church that's being used as a disaster relief distribution center. The pastor says he was shocked and disappointed that the suspect was taking advantage of what they're doing to help Hurricane Helene victims. A church member says the woman stole a blanket, clothes, tools, and food.
So here's blankets and sleeping bags that we've been giving out. This is donations that have come in specifically to help Helene victims.
And she came into this room?
She came in every room.
Police say they secured a warrant for the suspect. Next, a popular nicotine product now back on the market, this time with federal approval. Also, TSA loosening restrictions, the latest change hinted at, and how it can make your trip through airport security possibly easier. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. Popular music festival Bonnaroo is coming back in 2026 with a fresh layout, new experiences, and big improvements to weatherproof the farm. This year's festivities were canceled due to extreme storms and flooding. Also, legendary rock group the Steve Miller Band, they've canceled their entire 2025 tour. The band's social media account issued a statement citing concerns for fan safety due to extreme and unpredictable weather. Vaping brand Juul can continue selling its e-cigarettes on the U.S. market. The FDA on Thursday ruling that Juul studies showed that the company's e-cigarettes were less harmful for adult smokers. This stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is hinting at a possible TSA policy change for carry-on liquid containers. Currently, travelers can have carry-on containers of up to 3.4 ounces. Anything bigger must be put in checked bags. Noem didn't give details or a timeline of any future revisions. Last week, DHS announced travelers will be able to keep their shoes on through security checkpoints. Coming up in our next half hour, President Trump says he won't fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The high-stakes Oval Office meeting that could suggest otherwise. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
It's so interesting how the mood is depressed and yet the actual spending data continues to come in strongly.
Retail spending came roaring back in June, even as inflation started to rise. What's behind the boost?
we are not for sale.
Growing concerns about an effort to buy Chinese Communist Party-linked companies to buy up land in the United States. How some states are fighting back.
We have dismissed faculty for anti-Semitic behavior on social media in the classroom.
Heads of colleges or universities grilled once again on Capitol Hill about anti-Semitism on their campuses. What lawmakers say is to blame. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, we are glad you're here. I'm Dee Gatton, and we begin this half hour with retail sales, which rebounded in June, even as inflation starts to rise from the effects of President Trump's tariffs. The National News Desk, Atra Al-Nashar, takes a look at what's behind the boost in spending and how Americans are paying for it.
As prices on store shelves start to tick back up, Americans keep spending. After May's sharp drop in retail sales, spending bounced back in June, rising 0.6% from last month.
It's so interesting how the mood is depressed, and yet the actual spending data continues to come in strongly.
Wage growth has outpaced inflation for more than 2.5 years. The highest of President Trump's tariffs, forecasted to push up inflation, have been temporarily paused, and the stock market keeps breaking records.
There is data that shows that people spend more when markets are up. A lot of the tariff impacts so far have been delayed, but not necessarily avoided forever. There's still a feeling that maybe come August or September, these prices could be higher.
Going into back-to-school shopping season, 52% of parents say they're anxious about the potential for higher prices, according to a new survey by Deloitte. In order to keep spending, many rely on credit cards. New bank rate data finds about a quarter of credit card holders don't think they'll ever be able to pay theirs off. Credit card interest rates are near an all-time high. Here in Washington, interest rates are also a thorn in the side of President Trump. Now, the chair of the Federal Reserve cannot unilaterally cut rates, but that hasn't stopped the president from going after Jerome Powell every day this week.
He's always been too late, hence his nickname, Too Late. He should have cut interest rates a long time ago.
Jerome Powell has done a terrible job, and frankly, I don't think he could do a worse job.
Oh, he's a knucklehead. A stupid guy. Congratulations.
Trump was the first to nominate Powell to the job in 2017. Powell's term ends next May, and the president has already started the search for his successor. Thursday's strong retail sales data likely gives the Fed more reason to hold off on cutting interest rates while they wait for the effects of the president's tariffs, some as high as 50%, to set in. In Washington, I'm Atra Al-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Seasonal adjustments to data helped to flatten out last month's inflation readings, making them look less severe. That's according to major investment bank UBS, which says if the consumer price index had not been seasonally adjusted, the price increase would have been the largest 12-month jump since before the Federal Reserve began hiking rates. President Trump touted the core numbers, saying it gives the central bank room to ease up on rates.
Essentially, they were exactly as anticipated, very low inflation. So what you should do is lower the rate. The Fed should lower the rate immediately.
Some factors like weather, economic model changeovers, and Americans' vacation practices can impact the data. 5 Iranians and 2 Uzbeks were arrested after attempting to illegally cross the U.S. northern border with Canada. Border Patrol agents confirming that the arrest happened on July 1st. All 7 men had been arrested before for attempting to cross the border illegally. They're currently awaiting deportation proceedings. This all comes amid fears of Iranian terrorist sleeper cells hiding in the U.S. after the U.S. crippled several of Iran's nuclear sites last month. This week, President Trump denied he will fire Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, but he admits he did talk about possibly firing the chairman with GOP lawmakers Tuesday, and they agreed he should. Now he's taking a jab at the Fed headquarters renovations meant to cut costs over time by consolidating most operations.
I don't rule out anything, but I think it's highly unlikely. Unless he has to leave for fraud. I mean, it's possible there's fraud involved with the $2.7 billion renovation.
There is no evidence that there is fraud in the renovation project. Trump says he'll wait until the end of Powell's term in 8 months or so to pick somebody new. Powell says he will not leave if Trump tries to fire him. The National Urban League has declared a state of emergency, this in response to what the organization believes is an assault on civil rights by the Trump administration and the American right. The league's annual State of Black America report criticizes the administration for its reduction of federal agencies that enforce civil rights. It also warns that the U.S. could lose decades of progress if it doesn't change. At least one state's National Guard was hacked in 2024 by the Chinese cyber spy group Salt Typhoon. In a memo from the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense found the group extensively compromised a state's National Guard network from March through December of last year. The data may have contained sensitive military or law enforcement information. Authorities say they are still working to discover the extent of data accessed. Cases are mounting of groups affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party trying to gain more power inside the United States, often under wraps. The National News Desk, Christine Frizzell, brings us a closer look at how states are fighting back.
For years, companies associated with the Chinese Communist Party have been scooping up farmland all over the United States, the vast majority in just 5: Florida, North Carolina, Missouri, Texas, and Utah.
We talked about stopping entities from buying land in this state. One of the bills that we passed and signed into law actually also requires the divestiture of land that is owned by these foreign adversarial entities, and that is happening in our state as well.
Utah's Governor Spencer Cox just announcing a sale of land near the Provo Airport was just blocked from the company Cirrus Aircraft, majority owned by the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, which makes helicopters, fighter planes, and drones.
Their proposed investment in Utah was millions of dollars and hundreds of jobs, and I don't care. We are not for sale.
Experts say it's a sign of a more emboldened China that continues to try to infiltrate the U.S. system by any means necessary.
No American can own a square inch of land in China. So why do we allow the Chinese to own square miles of land in our country?
Chinese land purchases in the past have also been near military installations, with concerns raised about spying and access to our troops. The Trump administration recently announcing a new National Farm Security Action Plan.
As someone who's charged with leading the Defense Department, I want to know who owns the land around our bases and strategic bases, and getting an understanding of why foreign entities, foreign companies, foreign individuals might be buying up land around those bases.
Right now, 26 states have laws restricting foreign ownership or investments in U.S. farmland. Now, even though less than 1% is owned by adversaries, the next step for the White House is working to claw back what has already been purchased in the name of national security. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
The Syrian government and leaders of the Druze religious minority announced a new ceasefire as Israel launched airstrikes in Damascus Wednesday. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calls the situation complicated.
These are historic, long-time rivalries between different groups in the southwest of Syria, Bedouins, the Druze community, and it led to an unfortunate situation and a misunderstanding, it looks like, between the Israeli side and the Syrian side.
The deal comes just days after a previous ceasefire fell apart within hours. A House committee is looking into key factors behind the rise in threats to Jewish students on college campuses. At least 60 universities have already been notified by the Department of Education that they're under investigation for anti-Semitic discrimination and harassment. College leaders insist changes have been made.
We have dismissed faculty for anti-Semitic behavior on social media in the classroom, and also dismissed staff for the same behavior.
Some Republican lawmakers are blaming certain faculty and student groups, as well as foreign funding, for the surge in hate. The hearing took place as the Trump administration and Harvard University are locked in a fierce battle, the White House blocking funding and threatening its accreditation. The Trump administration has launched a new Office of Immigration Policy, a one-stop shop to help employers speed up legal visa approvals for migrant workers. The move aims to address labor shortages in farming, food processing, and hospitality, but it is facing pushback from immigration hardliners. Let's go to Janae Bowens from the Fact Check team to dig into the numbers here. So first of all, just break down the roles that undocumented immigrants play in these industries.
Yeah, Dee Dee. So the Center for Migration Studies estimates 8.3 million undocumented immigrants are part of the U.S. workforce. They say 1.5 million work in construction, 1 million in restaurants, and hundreds of thousands in agriculture, landscaping, and food processing. And jobs like cooks, caregivers, and delivery drivers are expected to keep relying on undocumented labor for years to come.
And as we look at our broader economy, how does that work translate into dollars?
Right. So in 2022, undocumented immigrants using ITINs paid $59.4 billion in federal taxes and $13.6 billion in state and local taxes. They also contributed $25.7 billion to Social Security, $6.4 billion to Medicare, and $1.8 billion to unemployment insurance, even though they're ineligible for those programs.
All right, Janae, thank you. If you want another look at those numbers, we've got you covered. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to sources, scan that QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the ongoing saga surrounding the Epstein files to the future of NPR and PBS amid funding cuts.
Welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The case of the late financier and convicted child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein continues to cause a rift between President Trump and some of his biggest supporters. National correspondent Matt Galko, you've been following this story closely. How did things get so tense between Trump and his backers?
Yeah, Steve, by almost any objective metric, this is a crisis that the Trump administration can blame on themselves. I mean, think of some of the prominent people in the administration. FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino are just two of the figures in Trump world that, in some cases, for years, pushed this idea that there is a list of prominent people in the world, wealthy, famous politicians, actors, whatever, that have dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. And there was a mass government cover-up to shield these people because they didn't want this very damaging information to come out. Those were things that were alluded to and said repeatedly by Patel and Bongino on podcasts. Bongino had his own very well-known podcast that a lot of people tune into. Pam Bondi earlier this year said she was reviewing a file when they were asked about when she was asked about a client list. She said she was reviewing it. It was on her desk. And then this memo comes out where it's basically case closed from the Department of Justice. That is where the rift is. There was a lot of red meat for a lot of Trump supporters that they would uncover this cover-up, this alleged cover-up about Jeffrey Epstein and his potential contacts throughout government, and it just didn't happen. So that is a huge backlash that they're facing from a lot of Trump supporters that were promised something and they feel like that promise wasn't kept. Now, the White House has tried their best to tamp down some of this rebellion, if you want to call it. The president has multiple times told his base to move on. He said he didn't want support from people who were buying into this. He has now blamed it on Democrats. He's called it a Democrat hoax. And it just doesn't seem to be working, though, no matter how hard the White House tries. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier this week, she talked about what is making Donald Trump so angry.
The president has been transparent. He has followed through on his promises to the American people, but he doesn't like to see Democrats and the mainstream media covering this like it's the biggest story that the American people care about.
Now, she was asked what element of the Epstein documents was a hoax, as the president has said, and she said the hoax is that Democrats all of a sudden want transparency on this when they haven't done that, and including the 4 years that former President Joe Biden was in office. She said that was the hoax. She also said that even though some Republicans in Congress are calling for a special prosecutor, a special counsel to look into this, that President Trump is also not recommending that. Look, the White House would like this all to go away, and eventually the news cycle does move on, but it hasn't moved on from this story quite yet, especially online, where there are still a lot of angry people.
Yeah, and Democrats are going to try to make hay of this as well, but as long as Republicans and supporters of the president continue to talk about it, I'm not sure this is going to go anywhere. Thanks, national correspondent Matt Galka. Meanwhile, a victory for President Trump as he claws back over $9 billion in previously authorized spending for public broadcasting and for foreign aid. National correspondent Christine Frizzau, what cuts were made and what are folks on each side saying about them?
Yeah, Steve, so we're talking about $9 billion in cuts. That's a pretty significant amount. $8 billion of that to foreign aid and a little over $1 billion to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds NPR and PBS. Let's start with the foreign aid really quick. There's a lot of questions about exactly what this is going to go for, how this is going to be cut, exactly what programs will no longer be available. That's kind of one of the biggest concerns raised, especially by Democrats, is they wanted more specifics. Republicans went on and on about some of the wasteful spending that happens when it comes to foreign aid, suggesting that those were some of the cuts that were going to be made. The $1 billion for Corporation for Public Broadcasting is something we've been hearing a lot about, and that includes from the two Republicans who voted no on this bill, including Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski.
It's not just your news, it's your tsunami alerts, it is your landslide alert, it is your volcano alert, it is the weather to let you know it's safe to go out and get on the fishing grounds. It's your educational programming.
Today, American people have access to all forms of media, streaming, cable TV, network TV, TikTok, Twitter, newspapers, those that are left. No one's in a news desert anymore. So why are we spending money on public broadcasting?
And I will say there's another kind of major concern that's been raised about this rescission package and the way it was passed. Very similar to the big, beautiful bill. This was sort of a mandate from the president. Republicans fell in line despite having concerns and voted and pushed it through. A lot of people are saying, you know, what about the power of legislators to legislate? Are we not doing that anymore? Sort of diminishing the power of Congress. That's a major concern for a lot of people here. And there are warnings that, you know, this is something, at least in the Senate, we hadn't seen in more than 30 years. There's a warning that this is just kind of the way that they're going to do business, is through reconciliation and rescission, with a warning from Democrats after all this happened last week, which is, if you're going to play this way, then so will we when we're back in power.
Right, but of course, the president and his supporters will say these are promises that he made during the campaign and long-held issues that he's had with these, with foreign aid and with public broadcasting, and he's just following through on those promises. Christine, Matt, thank you both for your hard work. Back to you.
CBS is ending The Late Show with Steven Colbear next May. Colbear shared the news on a show taping on Thursday, saying this is all just going away. There has been speculation about Colbear's future with CBS amid changes at the network's parent company, Paramount. CBS says the cancellation was a financial decision and not related to the show's performance or content. Getting beat down by the summer heat? Up next, experts' advice on how to stay cool. Also, the action being taken to crack down on a rise in violence among teens in Maryland. We'll have that story and more after this. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. And we start in Maryland, where officials are cracking down on violence from teenagers.
Laurel Mayor Keith Sidnor sharing this video with 7 News. He says it shows
a meetup. Young people gathering at the Laurel Town Center just to fight and cause trouble. He says when he first saw it, it affected him.
I was disappointed, that the parents would allow their kids to come out and being disruptive.
And so when a meetup on July 5th got out of hand with fights and young people even shooting fireworks at responding police officers, he decided the time had come to enforce an 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. youth curfew, with exceptions for school, work, church, sports, and entertainment events. He says Laurel police will enforce it, but he hopes parents will step up and be parents.
In Seattle, crowds flock to the Seattle Center Fountain and Green Lake, some of the city's go-to spots for cooling off.
I don't go anywhere anymore in summers because it's the best weather and the best place to be in summer, Northwest.
You got to make sure you got your sunscreen, you got to have plenty of water, and find the shade when you in between games.
Puget Sound Energy is asking customers to conserve power during flex alerts. They recommend thermostats be set no lower than 72 degrees and large appliances be turned off when not in use. And it's not just people feeling the heat, bridges are also cooling off. Video from SDOT shows water trucks spraying down the Fremont Bridge to keep steel components from expanding in the heat and affecting its ability to open and close.
We're lucky actually in Seattle. There's other places like Arizona and Florida where the heat is more brutal, so I say it's a gorgeous day right now.
Sunday's ICE detainment of 27-year-old Ivan Rene Mendoza Meza has drawn criticism from community members and local politicians.
These actions that ICE officials and other federal agents are committing in our city and our states are horrifying.
Providence police say ICE detained Mendoza after chasing the vehicle he was in to this home on Alverson Avenue. ICE Boston posted this morning saying Mendoza was a, quote, self-identified MS-13 gang member who had a criminal past that included fentanyl trafficking. It also claims Providence 6th District Court released him in 2024 against ICE orders. NBC 10 did confirm in court records that Mendoza was charged with 4 felony counts, 3 drug-related charges in 2023. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and posted bail.
Still ahead here, the Winter Olympics medal design announced. A first look at the prize the world's best athletes will be vying for. Plus, an NFL superstar hits a mega payday. The detail of TJ Watt's massive new contract. The medals for the 2026 Winter Olympic Games have been unveiled. Check them out. The Milan Cortina organizers revealed the medals in Venice. The Italian State Mint and Polygraphic Institute created the medals using recycled metal and renewable energy. Each medal features 2 halves representing the values of both the Olympics and Paralympics. The Winter Olympics begin in February. As we look ahead to the tickets for the 2026 World Cup, which will officially go on sale September 10th, that's when you can apply for your first chance to buy tickets, which will be released in phases. We don't know how much they'll cost, but estimates indicate anywhere from $70 to $300 for general seating. The games will be held in June in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. The Pittsburgh Steelers made All-Pro edge rusher TJ Watt the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. The Steelers and Watt have agreed to a 3-year, $123 million contract extension that pays him $41 million a year, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. The deal also includes $108 million fully guaranteed at signing. Watt has 108 career sacks. That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.